Welcome back to Medical Coding with Blue. Today's episode is all about the top 3 mistakes medical billing and coding students make. If you are brand new to my channel, welcome. I am Blue. I'm a medical coder. Okay, guys. So I will start off by saying this. I have been a medical coder since 2008. I am presently certified with the American Health Information Management Association. I hold 2 credentials, the CCSP, that's the Certified Coding Specialist Physician Based, and the CCS, the Certified Coding Specialist. Now, if you are getting prepared with your program to sit for an AHIMA credential or an AAPC credential, the American Academy of Professional Coders, this video is for you. So, the other thing that I will say is this. The things that I say tend to upset people, especially when it comes to like advice about avoid this or avoid that. The reason that I say the things that I say is because I see a lot of medical coding students, medical billing students, making unnecessary mistakes that are going to waste their time. It's not going to help them to develop professionally. It's not going to help them to develop as a good student either, okay? And when I see these things, it's upsetting because these are the people that are going to get into the field, and these are the people that are going to struggle because they're kind of learning the long way around rather than trying to get in there and be efficient right off the bat, okay? So that's what I will say to this. The other thing I'm going to say is this. There's a lot of people out there who are not medical coders who love to give advice to medical coding students because either they work for the school or they're an instructor and they haven't been in the real world in years, but yet they have that instructor title. So, you know, people tend to listen to them because they think that what they're saying is correct. And part of the top 3 mistakes that I'm going to talk about today is where you have to take on some of that onus, right? You have to take on the responsibility of doing your research as a medical billing and coding student. And you have to be able to do that because there's a lot of people who will take advantage of you if you do not, okay? So the top 3 things I'm going to talk about today, people don't like them because it's going to make them have to work a little bit harder. I want people to be set up for success. I don't want things, I don't want to tell people things that's going to make it so easy for them that they're going to expect to be spoon-fed, because that's not the way the real world works. When you get in the real world and they see that you have a certification, they are going to expect, because the expectation is when you have your certification, that you are competent, that you know what you're doing, or you know how to find the answer, okay? If you don't, then you need to learn, okay? And so hopefully this advice today will help you. Now, if you learn a different way, or if this does not work for you, that's totally fine. Don't waste your time with a comment because, guys, it's not needed, all right? This is for people who need that direction, who need to know, like, okay, what am I doing wrong? And, you know, maybe I should listen to somebody who has experience and who's been in the field since 2008. So I'm just saying. So with that said, okay, so here we go. The number 1 mistake that new medical billing and coding students make is that they tab, write, and highlight in their books, in their coding manuals. So if you are taking the CCSP or the CPC, you're going to be learning with the ICD-10-CM, the CPT, or the HCPCS Level 2 book, okay? Now, if you are taking the CCA or the CCS, then you're going to add on the ICD-10 PCS book to that books that you're going to be learning from. Each one of these books has its own set of rules on how to look up the codes or how to navigate through that book. Your job as the student is to learn to apply those rules and not be so dependent on trying to tab your books. A lot of people will say, well, how do I tab the ICD-10 PCS book? Now, if you're working with that ICD-10 PCS book, you know there's a lot of different sections to that book, and there's a lot of subsections to that book. So it's almost impossible to do. Now, I'm sure somebody's already done it before, but here's the thing. Those tabs are going to slow you down because you have to look in the index, and then you're trying to look in the tabular, and then you're going to be looking at all these tabs rather than just getting used to just looking through the index and then going back to the tabular and flipping till you find it, so that way you can get used to it. It is about getting comfortable with that book. A lot of people will write to me complaining that, oh, Blue, the books are so big and I don't like them. Guys, this is our world. These books, this is what we do. And yes, while there's the encoder, if you're not using the encoder properly, it can lead you to the wrong code. So books are very important, and getting comfortable is the key to being ready for that test. If you're taking an AHIMA certification exam, it is roughly 2 minutes per question if you're taking the medical coding certification exams. So that's something that you have to be prepared for. It's a lot to process and go through. And then if you are sitting here willy-nilly going through with these tabs, that's the thing, again, that's going to slow you down. And if you look at the candidate hand guide for the AHIMA exams, it specifically says you cannot have homemade tabs on the books when you are sitting for an AHIMA exam. It says that in black and white. I've had instructors who should be ashamed of themselves. I've had instructors tell me, oh, well, no, I tell my students that they can tab their books and they've been able to do. Okay, guys, no. Because these people at Pearson VUE are the ones who inspect these books. It is what they say at the end of the day. So if you stroll up in there with these homemade tabs that they tell you, they've already said, don't have them on there. They're going to make you take them off. And then guess what happens? You're going to be sitting there like, oh my gosh, I don't know how to navigate this book without those tabs. If you had listened and said, okay, I'm going to learn this book and I'm going to learn them without the tabs because it's not necessary. Because it's not. It is not necessary. And not only that, the tabs will tear your pages. And you can't put tape on those pages because both associations say that they do not allow tape on the pages of the books. And again, you're going to have these books inspected. So just be prepared, okay? If you've tabbed all your books now, take all the tabs off so that way you can learn to practice without the tabs. Because again, it is not necessary. And if you're using your book like you're supposed to, those tabs are going to get in your way, okay? And now again, if you have a thing where, oh, this is just how I learn, and guys, these are not workbooks. You have to respect your coding manuals because this is a reference book written by doctors and scholars who know what they're doing. You, again, just have to learn how to use the book, okay? And the other thing is this. When I see notes all over these pages and things like that, if you are about to take your certification exam and they see excessive writing, they can also tell you that you are not allowed into that testing center with this book because it has too much writing in it. Now, if they tell you it has too much writing in it, you just forfeited all your money for taking that test. Excessive writing is not allowed in the coding manuals. You don't have time anyway to read all of your notes. So again, if you are wasting time writing all these notes, guys, you need to reconsider your study approach, okay? Now, there's a lot of really great books out there. This is not an ad for Optum, but you guys know how much I love Optum. Optum Coding Books, optumcoding.com is where you can find them, and that link is in the description box below. I don't get commission for telling you guys to go there and getting this fantastic deal on these books. I don't. But I share it with you because, again, I want coders to be prepared with good tools, okay? And both associations allow you to have your choice of publisher when it comes to ICD-10-CM, ICD-10-PCS, and HCPCS. The only one that we all have to have the same book is the AMA CPT Professional Edition, okay? That's the only one. But other than that, if you're taking a AAPC exam, and you're thinking you need to have those AAPC brand of books, you don't have to because it says you have your choice of publisher. You can take that exam with an Optum book, and I recommend the Optum Expert for Physicians. Book, Optum ICD-10-CM Expert for Physicians book. I know there was part of that word missing, but that's what I recommend if you're taking an AAPC exam test. So that's the thing that you need to know, that you do have your choice of publisher. It does say it on the website. Avoid writing, tabbing, highlighting because it's unnecessary and it clutters up your book. Not only that, I have seen people be so proud of all of the writing that they've done in their book, and then they're like, oh yeah, I'm ready for the exam. And where are the codes? How do you even see the codes? Because you have all this writing and highlighting and circling and all this other garbage all over your book. So don't put yourself with that much anxiety, because I get anxiety looking at that page like that, okay? Take a clean book. Learn to practice with your book. And that's the problem that a lot of new medical coding students have, is that they just don't want to practice. They want to be told how to look up the codes. It's not about looking up the codes. It's about understanding the coding guidelines and looking up the codes and looking them up properly, so that way you're getting the correct code. Okay, that's just what I'm going to say about that. The number 2 mistake is depending on your teacher for all of the answers. So there's a lot of students out there, because I keep getting them. Blue, when do I take the state boards? Blue, I'm getting ready to take my state exam for medical coding. Okay, first of all, we are not certified by the state. And I've said this more than once this past week. And both of them have said, oh, that's what my instructor said. Okay, so if you're depending on your instructor to whatever they say is gold, and you're not doing your research, that's where you're in the wrong. You have to learn to do your research. When you are doing your research, you're going to be able to confirm these things. Because if you're running around saying, oh, I'm going to take my state board exam for medical coding, people that actually know and understand coding are going to look at you like you have 3 heads. Why? Because, again, we are not certified by the state. Medical coders are not like doctors. They're not like lawyers. They're not like nurses who have to take like the state tests and things like that. Those things are different. They're done by the states for those people, for those professions. We as medical coders are certified through the associations. You're either certified through the American Health Information Management Association or the American Academy of Professional Coders. Please stop saying I'm taking my state board exam, because again, you can tell that person just has no clue of what they're doing. And when you are running around saying things like that, it's easier for people to spot you, to like, okay, I can take advantage of that person, because there's a lot of people that will take advantage of you for not knowing, okay? And if you're in these Facebook medical coding groups that talk about that, oh, we're going to be taking our state boards, again, who are you listening to? Okay? And if you say, well, that's just what my teacher said, then why didn't you do your research? Why didn't you? Because I think about that. I've had people who write to me and say, oh, Blue, I live in Texas and I'm going to be moving to Florida. Do I have to get recertified by the state of Florida for medical coding? Does that make sense to anybody? Saying that, just saying those words? No, it doesn't. Because again, once you get certified by the association, AHIMA or APC, once you get certified through them, you can take your certification anywhere, anywhere that they're hiring a medical coder. And you could like, okay, I have, my medical coding certification. That's it. It's not a license. It's a certification. You have a certification number, all right? So there's a lot of very particular words that a lot of people just kind of throw around thinking that that's the appropriate way to speak. And again, when you get around somebody who knows better, I'm just saying. So please do your research and don't always depend on the teacher to spoon feed you the answers. If you're doing that, you're setting yourself up to fail, because sometimes these instructors are good instructors. There's good instructors out there, but there's also instructors that are there because they have a degree. They haven't been in the coding world for years because for whatever reason, they couldn't keep up with production. They couldn't keep up with accuracy. So they're going to be there to teach you medical billing and coding. And they're going to be proctoring this from a book. So again, beware of who your instructor is. And just because they have a degree, just because they have a slew of credentials after their name, it means nothing. It means nothing until they start teaching. And now if they're teaching and they're trying to teach you critical thinking, that's when you know you have a good teacher. If they're not trying to teach you critical thinking, if they get upset and mad at you because you're asking a question or you're telling them that you don't understand, but yet you aren't explaining why you don't understand, because I've seen that too, where people will say, well, I don't understand. You don't understand what? Where is the point where you're not understanding? Where does the comprehension stop? So that's where you need to express that to the teacher. But if the teacher is getting upset at you, again, that's not a good instructor at all, because adults learn differently from children. And there's a big difference in how you teach curriculum to adults versus children, okay? Because adults are actually worse to teach than children, because children, they most of the time they see somebody in authority and they're like, okay, I have to listen to this person, because that's what you do as a kid. You listen to the teacher. As soon as your parents drop you off, they're like, okay, you listen to the teacher, and they have to sit there and listen to the teacher. Yes, I know there's some bad kids out there, but that's not always the case. For the majority of them, it's the kids that are going to listen to the teacher. Adults, however, have a mind of their own. They don't have to listen. A lot of times they're upset that they have to go back to school, and they don't like school, and they start complaining and going on, and then there's a bunch of excuses that happen. So when they start doing that, all of that complaining and things like that, again, that's the road to nowhere. And so again, it's difficult to teach adults who are not fully into it and who don't have their heart into it. But a good teacher will help them and sometimes be able to guide them to be able to see how great it is to be able to go back to school, and that it's actually fun when you get past the long nights of study. You can see how it can be fun and rewarding once you get into this new career field. But you have to know that the studying never stops, the learning never stops, because everything gets updated every single year, and medicine tends to advance every year as well. So you have to be prepared for these things. And, going in with that mindset of being able to do your research right away, even when somebody tells you, okay, maybe the instructor says, well, there's two main medical coding associations, and, these are all the credentials. It is your job to go to those association websites and find out what's about them, right? What they're all about, rather. And then it is your job to look at the job listings and see what certifications are they asking for, so that way you know which one to go for. It's about doing your research. And if you're not doing your research and you're just following whatever that person says, again, you're going to be led around by the nose by somebody that doesn't know. Okay? So make sure that you know. Confirm what you hear. And that's why I always tell people, confirm even the things that I'm telling you. Go ahead. But a lot of times people, no, I'll ask this other person. I'll ask this other person. And that's the other thing too that's very irritating, is if you're asking a bunch of people questions and you're not actually doing your research with a book, that's a problem. And I've seen that. Somebody said that they have a CCS and a CPCA. And they're like, well, I'm doing professional fee coding. They were asking basic coding 101 questions. And I'm like, are you serious? These are basic 101 coding questions. Why are you asking these questions? Well, I asked a bunch of people and now I just don't know what to do. Did you even bother looking at the book? Because the book gives you that answer specifically, And so that's the thing too, guys. Do your research. That's the number 2 mistake that medical coders make. It's not medical coding students, rather, make, and medical coders. But medical coding students make is not doing their research. And you have to do your research. And it is as simple as going to Google. That is as simple as it is, guys. Very simple. Okay? All right. And the number 3 mistake that medical coding students make is that when they get into these fast-paced medical coding programs, they panic and they quit. They panic and they start complaining all over the internet that their school is too fast, that it's a scam, that they weren't able to learn anything, without taking the onus and the ownership of studying on your own. If you got into one of these horrible less than 6 month fast-paced medical coding programs and you are not taking advantage of the description box below that has a whole list of all the books that I recommend for learning medical billing and coding. There's 2 workbooks there, the ICD-10-CM and ICD-10-PCS Coding Handbook with the Answers by Nellie Leon Chizen. The other one is a CPC study guide. And yes, you can use that CPC study guide even if you're taking an AHIMA exam, because guess what? We all use the same CPT manual. We all use the same CPT code set. So, with that said, you can use that manual to help supplement your studies. AAPC got that book right, okay? Now, I will say this about that CPC study guide. If you're going to get the latest and greatest CPC study guide, I have not been able to locate a printed copy of the 2024 CPC study guide. Okay. I think now, again, it depends on, if you can find it, great. But if you can find a printed copy, great. But if you can't, you can always go with the 2022 CPC study guide or the 2023 if you can still find it in print, okay? But I think that AAPC is trying to go to the electronic ebook only for the CPC study guide. That's unfortunate, because I think that when you take books out of circulation and you only want to have it online, guess what? You're having to be constantly with that computer screen in your face, and you're constantly having to go through all of these things rather than actually using a book, which you're not going to be able to be, with like an encoder or anything like that, even when you're studying. So, even when you're taking an exam, rather. So when you are practicing with your books, again, if you can get a printed copy of that book, that would be great. The ebook is still there. I mean, if you have the ebook, you have the ebook. If that's all you have to use, that's all you have to use. But I like the scenarios that they give in that book. I hope that I'm wrong about them only doing the electronic version for that CPC study guide. I hope I'm wrong. But, I mean, guys, it's the book. It's the book itself. But that is a great and fantastic book that will help you to comprehend CPT. And it's great because it's broken down very well. They did a very good job on it. And as far as the ICD-10-CM and ICD-10-PCS coding handbook with the answers, because there's two versions. There's one with the answers and one without the answers. I recommend you get the one with the answers because it's going to give you the breakdown and the rationale as to why it, why certain codes are applying. And you need to know that, because otherwise you're just practicing and not knowing if you're getting it right or not, okay, if you're getting the one without the answers. Now, if you're taking an exam that does not require you to know about ICD-10 PCS, you can certainly skip those questions in that book, okay? It doesn't necessarily count you out from using that book. So that's just my advice anyway. And again, the links are in the description box below. They are a few years old, the links, because 2019, I think I got the 2022 ones up there. If not, you can always get that title and then put the current year on it and see, how much that book costs or whatever. But I always try to get the ones that are maybe a couple of years old, so that way it can be a little bit cheaper when you're trying to study and get materials, because it does get expensive after a while, okay, if you're buying all these books willy-nilly. If the book that you have with the school is like 1, 2, 3 coding or any kind of like those bug books, those are a little bit more harder to learn from, especially bucks. I didn't like bucks. Some people like bucks, and if you like bucks, that's on you. That's fine, whatever. But I just think that the way that the bucks books are written for people who already know what they're doing. It's just kind of complicated the way that they explain things. That's just my opinion. And so that's why I like the ICD-10-CM and ICD-10-PCS coding handbook with answers by Nellie Leon Chesson, because it is explained very well. It is very straightforward, and it is an excellent book. That's just what I'm going to say. So with that said, make sure that you are doing your research, okay? And not panicking when you get into these fast-paced medical coding programs, because you can supplement your studies. So that's the number 3 thing, is supplement your studies. And if you're not learning enough from your program, that is the number 3 thing. If you're not learning enough from your program, make sure that you are supplementing your studies with those workbooks and using your coding manuals to look up the codes and reading your coding guidelines in their entirety once per week. So that way you can get familiar with the rules. It's not about memorizing them, but it is about going through and looking at the guidelines so that they can be familiar. So when you are presented with those questions where there's a little bit of a question on the sequencing or what do I code here, you're going to know exactly where to go, okay? I'm just saying. So with that said, I'm going to go ahead and wrap this one up. Thank you very much for joining me. If this video helped you, please like, subscribe, and share, and I'll see y'all next time. Bye.